all of the inflammatory language that's used to describe vegetable oils. Get it? Get it? Inflammatory language. Get it? What did
That
the
is
Kool-Aid
good.
man say when he went through the wall? Did you just go
Isn't it like,
like,
oh yeah,
I
isn't
was gonna say it's like,
it?
hey, but then that's the Fonz. So hit me, producer Potts.
So, Dr. Sarah, learning that vegetable oils are not unhealthy has been a bit mind-bending, but I'm trying to turn the corner on that. So, are there any health benefits to vegetable and seed oils?
Yes, it is actually beneficial for our health to consume vegetable oils. Very specifically, vegetable oils are all oils made from like the endosperm of a plant, which basically means the seed of a plant, that are high in a type of omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acid called linoleic acid. And a huge variety of studies done in humans, both like prospective cohort studies where they look at how much you eat and they put you in different categories and then look at your health outcomes, as well as intervention clinical trials where they say, hey, now I want you to consume all of this sunflower seed oil or safflower oil. Those studies show actually measurable benefits to our health from consuming vegetable oils, linoleic acid, very specifically by reducing all-cause mortality, a general indicator of health and longevity, and one of our best ways to just kind of gauge whether or not something is good or bad for us overall. But then also lowers risk of coronary artery disease, and stroke, and cardiovascular disease mortality, reduces risk of type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome, which is kind of the collection of insulin resistance and cardiovascular disease risk factors. And there's even some data, it's basically, it's in that phase where it's just starting to become like enough to be able to really conclusively say lowers risk of breast cancer, although it doesn't appear as though vegetable oil consumption affects cancer risk overall. So in terms of cancer risk, not a big effect, but in terms of breast cancer, somewhat of a mild beneficial effect. I am looking at my notes and there's one more, which is mortality from cancer. There is a lower risk. So even though it doesn't impact cancer incidence, it does impact cancer mortality. And not only that, not only are those the benefits, and I think we should actually like quote statistics from studies that look at how much to get how much benefit, because I think that's really important for really busting the myth that vegetable oils are the cause of these issues compared to the science that shows they reduce risk. So the opposite of that. But also, there's so much data in humans. There's so many clinical trials in humans that we have huge systematic reviews and meta-analyses, which are pooling together all of that data to measure the overall effect, where the preponderance of evidence lies in the scientific community supporting the benefits of vegetable oils. And that's really important because that has a higher level of like rigor and like solidity of scientific evidence than looking at any one specific trial.
So also that includes like things like conflicts of interest and funding, because that's something we always hear come up again and again.
Yes. So meta-analyses as part of their like analysis, when they are figuring out what studies to include, they evaluate studies for risk of bias as well as the quality of the study design. And they can weight how much, like can either decide like not to include a study because it's a terrible study, or they can include it but weight how much it contributes to the results based on those types of measurements. So if a study is at high risk of bias, it's a terrible design. It's not likely to actually provide really important insight. It might be included in the analysis, but given a lower weight than a study that's like super double blind and has all the right controls and has a really big data set and has all the most like rigorous quantitative measurements. So a study that has really great design, is really high quality, might contribute to that overall analysis a little bit more. So all of that is like integrated into the really sophisticated statistics that they do in meta-analyses, and why, again, meta-analyses are and systematic reviews and umbrella reviews are the highest level of scientific evidence. They are the most trustworthy science we have, because again, it's not just one experiment. It's not just, one small group of people. It is all of the different studies that are trying to answer the same question, all of that evidence put together into one study. So we really get to see where all of the evidence is. So we can't cherry pick. Like, systematic reviews are like the opposite of cherry picking.
Gotcha. Okay. And then one other point, because I'm sure if I'm thinking about it, other people are thinking about it. There is like a difference in quality and processing and chemicals used in processing. So I think maybe we should cover that in another video. So everyone just stick a pin in that, and we will cover that in another video. But I do think what you said about going into the amounts and how much that improves, like the actual statistics, would actually be really helpful. So yeah, let's do that.
For sure. And it's worthwhile emphasizing that in these studies are using the same vegetable oil as what you can get at the grocery store for these studies. So they're not using like a special organic cold
pressed sunflower oil, right, something or other. Wow. Yes, okay.
Occasionally there are studies like that exist, right? That are very specifically comparing, right, extra virgin olive oil versus a refined olive oil. There are studies like that out there. But when we're looking at these like big questions of, are vegetable oils good or bad, we're looking at the same thing that you buy, not just at your local like Safeway or Kroger, but like your Dollar Tree. Like we're looking at the most basic option of what you can get at the store. So don't think that, oh, those benefits are only because it was like a special type of vegetable oil. It is exactly what you can buy for cheap at your grocery store.
That's so good to know. Fascinating. Okay, I will. Let's get to all the statistics and the numbers then. That would be good to know.
I'm gonna pull them up in front of me so I can make sure I'm quoting them exactly.
Yeah. No, that's great.
I should note before we get into quoting these exact studies, I am pulling this directly from my like giant epic new article busting all of the myths about vegetable oils that are available at Nutrivore.com. So if people want to go look at the actual like papers themselves, the citations, all of that is in the article. So head there, because they're hyperlinked. So it's as easy as it possibly can be for you to go and read the original science for yourself if that's something that you want to dive into. So let's start with all-cause mortality as a general indicator of health and longevity. But typically, these are evaluated in the same studies as cause-specific mortality. So they usually look at cardiovascular disease mortality and cancer mortality. So here are the statistics. This comes from a 2020 systematic review and meta-analysis. It analyzed 44 studies that encompassed over 800,000 study participants, and they looked at both dietary intake of linoleic acid, so how much vegetable oil and other food sources of linoleic acid are in the diet, but also markers of linoleic acid, so how much is actually in tissues. So those are basically considered like two different ways of measuring the same thing. And what they showed was the highest versus lowest amount of linoleic acid, so the people with the most in their body, had a 13% reduced risk of total mortality, all-cause mortality, compared to the people who had the lowest levels, whether you measured it from diet or biomarkers. They also had a 13% lower risk of cardiovascular disease mortality and an 11% lower risk of cancer mortality, which is a very significant effect. And when the study authors analyzed based on standard deviation, so like the adding a level of intake, they showed that for each step up that the study participants did in intake, that reduced all-cause mortality by 9%, cardiovascular disease mortality by 11%, and cancer mortality by 9%. Different way of looking at the same data. Still a very impressive magnitude of effect.
I think, like I said, really trying to wrap our heads around this idea that vegetable oils aren't bad, but you're just taking it that further step and being like, no, look at this. And to hear you read these numbers and to think back to your comment about this could be like canola oil from the Dollar Tree is actually just, it's really mind bending, but it's also so fascinating. It just kind of shows, you can think something or learn something because you explain in another video, which I'll make sure to link here, of like why it was actually very logical for us to think that these were harmful for us. So like it made sense that we thought that. But now we looked at human studies versus rodent studies, a bunch of other stuff. You explained that in the other video. Go watch that other video if you catch up with where I'm at with Sarah today in my brain. But to think about all of that and then to hear about these benefits, it's interesting because it almost takes me back to like there was a time period where everyone thought eggs were so awful, and like eggs are so nutrient dense. They're packed with so many nutrients. So it's just like, I think there can be this like idea of like, oh, well, this was bad and now it's good. And what am I supposed to do? And this is confusing. But it's like, I think there's a realization that you've said before that nutritional sciences is so young compared to other sciences we have. And we're going to continue to learn and discover and progress. And like, this is good news. This is an affordable, accessible product that's also good for us.
Yeah.
That's something to celebrate versus like be upset about,
And you can stop obsessing about food labels, right? Like how many shirtless grocery store walker wellness influencers are out there telling you to check the label for industrial seed oils and how they're toxic and inflammatory. And
I wasn't even thinking about stuff in packages. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Mind blown.
So here's the thing that's really important is that that fear mongering about seed oils, industrial seed oils, processed, vegetable oils, all of the inflammatory language that's used to describe vegetable oils. Get it? Inflammatory language. Get it?
Yes. I got it.
It is making you afraid of a food that's actually good for you, that would actually lower your risk of cardiovascular disease. So that fear, beyond the stress response and how harmful that is changing your dietary habits. Unless you completely swap out for olive oil, which definitely is still the king of, beneficial oils. But there's lots of other things that you might be swapping them out for. And you may be net like negative effect on your health because of all of these vegetable oil myths that are out there, fear mongering and actually beneficial, healthy food. So it's not just that I want to help people understand that these are myths and not be afraid of vegetable oils. It's that I want people to better understand what a, health promoting dietary composition is. And that actually includes choosing some vegetable oils, especially canola. Canola is can of worms. We're gonna do it in another video. I keep saying canola oil in another video, but we're sure gonna do it. But like especially canola oil, in addition to olive oil, like having olive oil and not canola, maybe not as good as having both. I mean, that is how great canola oil is. And I think that it goes completely against all of the myths. I can already hear the angry typing in the comment section just saying that. But that's why I have done such an incredibly rigorous deep dive into the scientific literature to bust these myths so that you have all of the citations and links directly to them so you can go read the original science for yourself and just see how solid this body of scientific evidence is showing health benefits to vegetable oils.
Yeah. And just for the audience listening, it was from Sarah that I learned to avoid seed oils. So she's been where we all are right now. So it's not just, it's coming from a place of like,
I was wrong. And I'm trying to correct the record on that. I was wrong about vegetable oils.
Right.
And I want to make sure that, because I bought into these myths as well, the science, like the explanation based on cell culture studies and mechanistic studies, made a whole lot of sense to me. So I want to make sure that I am busting those myths, because they're everywhere, and we're all susceptible to believing them. And that's also why I have such an epic deep dive article for you to read, going through all of this science, because it takes that kind of deep dive to actually effectively bust such a pervasive and ubiquitous myth, right? This myth it's deep and it is everywhere.
It's everywhere.
All across the wellness group.
Yes. So Sarah has the deep dive article, which I'll make sure is here, but also we're doing all of these different videos. We keep saying we're going to do this video. We actually are doing all of these videos. As they are posted on YouTube, I will actually make a playlist for everyone and put them all in there so that you guys can all easily find them. And if that video hasn't been done yet, know it's coming. It'll, we put our longer videos out on Tuesdays and Fridays, so you can keep an eye out for that. And we do welcome comments. There might be follow-up videos we need to make, but just keep your comments.
Don't angry comments.
And approach with curiosity. That's all that we ask. So
ask a genuine question and I will answer it.
Yes.
If you just have angry things to say, no, thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah.
Just shout them into a pillow instead. It'll be about as effective. Okay. Let's talk about the other health benefits of vegetable oil. Just moving right along.
Wait, there's more?
Oh, yes.
I thought that I was mind blown. I didn't even realize there was more. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead.
We're not even done yet.
I genuinely had no idea. I thought you were wrapping up the video. Okay, go.
Vegetable oils also reduce risk of cardiovascular disease. The strongest evidence is for hemorrhagic stroke and coronary heart disease. So this comes from a 2014 systematic review and meta-analysis that encompassed over 310,000 study participants and found that the highest intake of linoleic acid versus the lowest reduced risk of coronary heart disease events by 15%, on top of a 21% lower risk of coronary heart disease-related deaths. And a 2020 systematic review and meta-analysis that included 11 studies and almost 48,000 study participants found that the highest versus lowest intake of linoleic acid reduced risk of hemorrhagic stroke by 13%. And there's more.
Okay.
Vegetable oil reduces risk of type 2 diabetes.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
What?
I know, right? So a 2021 systematic review and this meta-analysis did a dose response. It encompassed 31 studies and 380,000 study participants, found that highest versus lowest linoleic acid intake reduced risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 6%. But then they showed that for every 5% increase in energy from linoleic acid, so that means if I'm getting 5% of my calories from linoleic acid versus 10% of my calories from linoleic acid, that drops type 2 diabetes risk by 10%. And then when they looked at biomarkers, so looked at markers in fat tissue, adipose tissue, or blood, they showed that for every standard deviation increment, which basically is kind of similar to going from 5% to 10% calories, it's just a different way of kind of measuring those jumps, risk of type 2 diabetes decreased by 15%. This is not even the only meta-analysis. There was a 2017 pooled analysis of 20 studies that included nearly 40,000 adults that also showed that the higher the biomarkers of linoleic acid as a percentage of total fatty acids, the lower the risk of type 2 diabetes. So yeah, vegetable oil also reduces risk of type 2 diabetes. And then, as I think I mentioned at the top, there is overall vegetable oils seem to have no effect on cancer incidence, sort of like broadly, but there is a pretty like growing body of evidence showing that it reduces risk of breast cancer specifically. So there was a 2016 meta-analysis of 8 studies, but it included 359,000 adult females, and found that breast cancer risk decreased by 1% for every 10 grams per day of linoleic acid intake. So they showed that when they compared high versus low, they needed more data. The protective effect was still not statistically significant. So we'll put a little asterisk behind the vegetable oil reduces breast cancer disease risk and say we're still at a point where like the statistical power, even when we pool together these studies to compare high versus low intake, is not quite high enough to say with absolute certainty that it decreases risk. But we do have growing evidence to that effect. So we just need more science on that one.
So I'm thinking of the original video we did where you talked about all the studies that are showing like why we were wrong about how we thought about vegetable oils, right? And like that was a huge amount of scientific studies. And now you're sharing all of these studies, which you've quoted a few studies, but these studies
all
include
right
a ton of studies in them. So there's this whole idea in the wellness space that I've seen come up since you published your article. And it's like this idea that there's some big bad overarching corporation or the government in general that is giving us all this information about vegetable oils in order to keep us sick so they can keep making money off of us. And just like that sounds ridiculous next to this amount of scientific studies. It's just almost like it makes it what I'm saying is it makes it sound more ridiculous than it did. It already sounds very conspiracy theory,
sure.
kind of type thinking. But also, even if there was some sort of like, because you've said with every myth there's kind of a seed of truth, like this has just blown this all out of the water, like so far as like, oh well, big food or whatever, right. So I think I just appreciate you diving into all of this and laying this all out, because I think it just really kind of makes that sound really silly and squashes that whole thing.
I hope so. I know that some people really believe conspiracy theories, and it's really hard to be open to evidence that contradicts them. If that's you and you're watching this video, like, round of applause for like just being here and listening. I think that's amazing. I understand how easy it is to just kind of put on those blinders and not want to challenge our previously held beliefs. And I think with vegetable oils being so demonized by like many different diets across sort of health conscious communities for so long, right? Like vegetable oils as toxic myths go back a couple of decades now. I think that it's why, again, I've done such a thorough summary of the scientific literature to combat that. It's like vegetable oil myths are a brick wall. We need a big machine to break through that brick wall. So
Sarah, you gave us a sledgehammer. I think
I just said that my article on vegetable oils is basically the Kool-Aid man.
Right, breaking through the wall.
Yeah, I think that's what I just said.
Exactly. Wow, this was so great. I'm gonna be re-listening to this myself to like really absorb all these different health benefits again, because I think hearing how good it is gives you the push to be like, okay, next time I'm in the grocery store, I'm not just going to get my olive oil. I'm also going to look for canola oil. Right.
You can do it. You can do it.
We can do it. Okay. Thank you so much for this. Again, we will link the article. I will make sure there's a playlist. We're diving into all this stuff. So thank you all for being here. And thank you, Dr. Sarah, for the sledgehammer.
Thank you.